You're listening to the OCD Stories podcast, hosted by me, Stuart Ralph. The OCD Stories is a podcast dedicated to raising awareness and understanding around obsessive-compulsive symptoms. I do this through interviewing inspired therapists, psychologists, and people who have experienced OCD. Welcome to the OCD Stories. And welcome to episode 410 of the podcast. And in this one, I got on Benjamin Ellis, who's kindly agreed to share his OCD story with us. And in particular, we talk about sexual intrusive thoughts, existential themed OCD, going into an eating disorder rehab facility, suicidal thoughts, doing exposure response prevention therapy, finding help in mixed martial arts, and much more. And thank you to NoCD for supporting the podcast. NoCD offers effective and convenient therapy available in the US and outside the US. To find out more about NoCD, their therapy plans, if they currently take your insurance, or to download their free app, head to go.treatmyocd.com/the OCD stories, or the link will be in the episode description. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting our work. To sign up to our Patreon and to check out the other benefits you'll receive as a patron, please see the link in the show notes. So thank you so much to Ben for his time and his story. I really appreciate it. And of course, thank you to you guys for listening, as always. And without further ado, here is Ben. Welcome to the podcast, Ben.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. So I'd love to hear your OCD story in as little as much detail as you want to give.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just start from the beginning, kind of the pre-diagnosis childhood. So I grew up in a rather large family. I'm the oldest of 6 kids. I have 5 younger siblings. So kind of just growing up, I knew I was always like an anxious kid. But I didn't quite know there was an underlying issue, I guess. I just always had this like pit in my stomach. I always just kind of felt like something was off, like walking around with this feeling of guilt everywhere I went. And it started to get really bad when I was about age of 16, 17. It started to get pretty bad. There started to be a lot more intrusive thoughts, a lot more obsessions that I didn't realize were obsessions at the time. It started to come into play.
Okay. So when you were 16, 17, it felt like it was sort of ramping up or getting worse for you?
Yeah, it kind of went from maybe like a 7 to a 10, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, share as much detail as you want, like how it affected you, like how the obsessions, compulsions, just anything you want to share on your journey.
Yeah, well, for a while I was able to just kind of shove it down, but eventually it led to me developing kind of a compulsion that was pretty detrimental to my health. I guess I used to call it an eating disorder, but now I don't think it meets the criteria for an eating disorder. But I would just make myself throw up. I think it's more falls into a self-harm kind of compulsion. I would every time I felt like the obsessions and the thoughts were too much to take, I would just go make myself throw up.
Mhm.
And it got so bad to the point where I lost a lot of weight. People were suspecting that I had an eating disorder, and eventually getting called out on it by my parents.
And so you're saying there it was now in retrospect feels more like a self-harm type thing. Was it a way of escaping the obsessions, or was it like punishing yourself? Or
It was both. It was like when I throw up, I can purge all of these bad thoughts from my mind, all of these things I'm afraid of. But at the same time, it was like the obsessions I were having were a lot of them were sexual in nature, and having thoughts about like sexual assault and awful things like that that go against, who I stand for as a person. It was like, all right, I can kind of kill two birds with one stone. I can get it out of my body, and I can punish myself for even thinking that thought.
Yeah, wow. And after you did it, did you feel a sense of like relief, or did it just not help much?
Yeah, I mean, for about 10 seconds after, it
Okay.
was like,
Yeah.
I don't know, it was like, oh, it's all out. I feel better. Um,
Mm.
and then it all kind of comes back. The shame of what I had just done, the harm I had just induced on my body, it just kind of, and it just would get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. And you said
Yeah.
your parents kind of found out. Were you doing this in secret, or did they kind of just notice the
Well,
body
it's,
weight?
yeah. I mean, as secret as I could, I guess.
Okay.
Um, I mean, I wouldn't want anybody to know that I was doing this because I think I kind of knew like it's not normal to be making yourself throw up. But at the same time, I would just tell them like, oh, I just feel really nauseous in the morning, but then the mornings turn to afternoons and evenings,
Mm.
and eventually I start losing a good bit of weight. It's it starts to become a little more than just like it starts to look like there's a larger issue at play here.
Yeah. Oh wow. So did they sort of bring this up with you? Did they mention they're noticing these things? And
Yeah, my mom had mentioned that she thought I had bulimia, and
okay.
and I was just kind of like, yeah, I guess. I don't know what else you would call it. And my dad was making constantly saying that I was acting like an addict, trying to sneak away to go throw up, like lying when I saying I hadn't thrown up when I had.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. And this was all around 17, you say?
Yeah, 17, 18.
17,
This is
18.
about two
Wow.
years ago now.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay. And when they came to you, I guess, did you know it was OCD at that point?
No, I had no
Okay.
idea that it could have even been OCD. I thought I was just a monster.
Oh, of course. Yeah. You're sort of really believing in the thoughts at the time. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. Okay.
And the thing was,
Yeah.
yeah, no,
So,
I had
okay.
no, I was eventually got so bad. I had just told my parents everything. Like I was like, this is what's running through my head, and I was like, this is what I'm thinking. I don't know why I'm thinking it, but this is what I'm thinking. And I was very lucky that they didn't judge me for the thoughts I was having. Just kind of felt bad for me, but they didn't know it was OCD. They didn't know this is what OCD could be.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you really shared like the content of your thoughts and the graphical nature and all of that, or did you sort of give them a
Hmm.
glimpse of it?
Yeah, no, I said I as graphic as it could be. I figured,
Yeah.
if any, these are my parents. They're because rationally, I did know like I haven't done anything wrong. These are just thoughts. Like I just still I felt horrible and awful. So like I haven't done anything wrong. So at least I can share with my parents, and they won't, you know, kick me out. I guess.
Okay, and they received it well. It sounds like they listened and
I guess as well as they could.
yeah,
They again didn't quite understand either.
yeah. You never come across it, right?
Mm-mm.
So okay, so what kind of how else? So obviously you're having these sexually based intrusive thoughts, and then obviously you were sort of purging as a way of punishing slash getting rid of the thoughts. Um, how else did it show up? What other sort of compulsions did you find yourself doing at that time?
Hmm. Oh, I had a compulsion with I had very bad existential OCD
Yeah.
as well. So I had compulsions with I would buy religious textbooks, like like things that people would study maybe in like their doctorate degree,
Okay. Yeah.
and just sit there and read, try to discover the secrets of the universe, I guess. Um, I would, and then once I had felt bad about the money that I had, I guess, wasted, I would donate them to the library. Just try to get rid of them.
Yeah.
Um, I would make lists. I made hundreds of lists, trying to, I guess, like plan out my whole life, trying to like
Mm.
check off things that I had done throughout the day. Um, I was a wrestler at the time. That was kind of my identity. I was a high school wrestler, captain of the varsity team. I had tons of little mental rituals I needed to complete before each match. One of them actually was throwing up because I was so anxious for my matches. So I had to throw up. I had to have my shoes a certain way. I had to listen to this certain music. I had to. It was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. And with the wrestling, what was the kind of worry if I don't do these rituals, these compulsions? What was the worry that might happen?
It was, I guess, that I would lose.
Yeah, yeah.
It, I guess, wrestling. It was my only. It was like the first time I guess I'd ever had purpose in my life. It was like, oh, I'm kind of good at something for the first time ever. Um, I don't know what else my life can amount to, so this is who I am, and I because I'm suffering in every other aspect of my life, I kind of just put all my eggs in one basket. And so when I failed in my high school wrestling career too, it was like insult to injury, all this other stuff I was dealing with, and things that materialized through wrestling.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like with the existential worries as well, like trying to figure out the meaning of the universe and life itself. And then here
Hmm.
you are, really good at a sport, and if I fail at this sport, well, I guess what I'm saying is being great at the wrestling kind of gave you a meaning, and that kind of answers the existential question somewhat, So
In some way, it did. Yeah, it was the only relief I had from those unanswerable questions.
yeah, wow, wow. Do you still wrestle today?
Kind of. I actually fight mixed martial arts. I do cage
Oh, cool.
fighting now,
Yeah. Okay.
and
Cool.
that is that is a huge part of my recovery.
I bet
That
it is. Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't make me quite as anxious as wrestling did in high school since I've figured out there's more to me than just an athlete, right? But it fighting is a great therapy for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, I'll ask you some questions about that in a bit because I'm curious. But okay, so the existential stuff as well was around 17, 18. Is that,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I grew up religious as well, so I
Okay.
grew up Roman Catholic, so a little bit of that fear of God was already in me, and it
Yeah.
was amplified by OCD.
Oh, yeah. So you were buying these, I'm guessing, expensive textbooks if they were for like PhD type
Hmm.
candidates and or masters
Yeah,
level. Yeah.
yeah, some of them were like $100 a piece.
Wow. Wow. And were you reading like all of them or sort of just flipping through them, finding bits?
I I would start reading them, maybe get like a quarter of the way through them, which I mean still was a lot with
Yeah.
these giant books, and then the process of feeling bad about what I had done, realizing like, oh, this one's not going to give me the answers either.
Okay. Yeah. And then give them
Just
away.
yeah, because I guess I had thought like, oh, one of these days I'll buy a religious book and it'll click with me, and I'll be like, this is the correct religion.
Yeah. Yeah. There's an answer in a book somewhere. That was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Um, and I guess where are you at now with like, I'm guessing the existential stuff's not bothering you as much as it was.
No, it's not. I really had to I had to do a lot of therapy to make peace with the fact that that is not a question that could be answered.
Yeah, yeah,
And I had to just completely stop going to church just for my own health. Also, it wasn't something that I had personally believed in, but I still respected that my family wanted to, that was a part of their life and something that they believed in. So I had just made the decision for myself, like if I remove myself from church
mm,
and just stop looking for the answer, that's the best I can do. And then I kind of have my own little philosophy of it's very simple, just follow the golden rule, and I'll be okay.
what's the golden rule?
Just do unto others as I would like done unto
Oh,
myself.
okay. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah, true. Um, okay. And then you said, at what point did you sort of get a diagnosis or figure out it was OCD?
Yeah, so I actually didn't get a diagnosis until I had been admitted into a eating disorder rehabilitation facility.
Mm.
Um, it had gotten to the point where actually I had attempted suicide just because I was also trying a bunch of different medications at the time, really trying to figure out what's wrong with me. And they had given me an antipsychotic, and
Mm.
I had reacted pretty poorly to that. And with a combination of a lot of other things going on at the time, I had just tried to kill myself. So immediately after that, I was admitted into an eating disorder rehabilitation facility, which I was already kind of on the wait list for. It just my suicide attempt kind of sped up the process to
Yeah,
get
pushed
there.
you up. Yeah.
hmm
Yeah.
So I got there. I was the only man in the facility, so like 20 some odd women and me. So that kind of added to the that feeling of like otherness.
Mm.
Oh, this is strange. I'm not sure I belong here either. And on top of all of that, everybody in the facility, it was like a good amount of them was like their third, fourth time in rehab. And kind of all of those thoughts were like, oh my God, am I ever gonna figure out what's wrong with me? Am I just due for a life of suffering?
Mm.
And I kept all of my thoughts that I was having to myself until the very last day of treatment because I figured, because in my mind, I thought if I disclose all the thoughts that I'm having to a therapist or to a psychiatrist, I'm going to get in trouble. Um, so I figured it was the last day. I'm still not feeling any better from when I came in. The only thing that's happened to me is I got a bunch of money or got a bunch of drugs and food pumped into me.
Mm.
So I might as well kind of disclose what's going on in my head. And much to my surprise, the psychiatrist had said, "Oh, it sounds like you might have OCD."
Wow.
So no, so that was kind of the click for me. I went home from rehab and went to my personal psychiatrist at home and told her everything, and she was like, "Oh yeah, that's OCD symptoms," and took the Yale Brown OCD test and got my OCD diagnosis.
Oh, wow. Wow. And when that first psychiatrist said that, what was your initial reaction to hearing that?
I was like, interesting.
Mm.
Um, thought it was yeah, I just thought it was very interesting. It wasn't even out of all the mental illnesses I thought I could have had, that wasn't one of them that had been on my list, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, true. That's it. Um, okay, wow. And then okay, so then you went back home, saw your regular psychiatrist. She
hmm
did the test, gave you the diagnosis. Um,
Right.
what happened after that?
Um, it things when started getting a lot better pretty quickly. Um, we were able to it took some trial and error, but eventually got me off of the medications that I didn't need to be on.
Mm.
There was a antipsychotic that I was on called Zyprexa, and that getting off of that was so difficult because while I was in the rehabilitation facility, they had tried to quit me kind of cold turkey a few times. And I went through some of the most like horrific withdrawal symptoms ever. I was having every single like obsession that you like of all the OCD obsessions that are listed that you can have, I was having like all of them. I was having harm, I was having suicide, all of the sexual OCD thoughts, even ones that I hadn't had before, like a lot of checking symptoms, a lot of like cleanliness, and like it was making my brain like kind of short circuit, and it was also giving me physical symptoms where I kind of felt like my blood was thick, just everything hurt, and having suicidal thoughts again from being quit from an antipsychotic cold turkey. And while I was in Missouri at this treatment facility, I drove myself to the emergency room and was like, "Hey, I think I'm withdrawing from a drug." And they just took that as to, "Oh, we're gonna put you in the psychiatric unit in the psych ward, I guess." So, and there they had just put me back on the antipsychotic that I was trying to get off of. So when I came back home, it kind of started a really careful weaning process of that, where I think it took about 3 months to wean me off of the antipsychotic properly, gradually going lower in doses. But then I also got on the correct SSRI finally. I started taking Luvox or fluvoxamine, which I still take today, and it helped me greatly. Just kind of takes the edge off of a lot of the intrusive thoughts that I have, and also beginning ERP work and some CBT work to deal with the obsessive thoughts that I was having.
Mm. And was it your psychiatrist that did the CBT, or did you see a different therapist for that?
So that kind of goes into the next piece of my at-home recovery journey, is I needed to find a therapist who knew what they were talking about. Because at this time I now knew that talk therapy probably wasn't the best thing for me. And in total I went through about 8 therapists before I found one that knew what they were doing. And I mean, I didn't even quite know what I was doing myself. I just knew that, reassurance and just sitting there and telling them what they possibly think isn't the best cure for my OCD. I need somebody who's going to do the ERP with me. And then I found my current therapist who, again, it took a while, but started delving into a lot of the topics that troubled me.
Amazing. And then what was going through ERP like for you?
Very scary.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those topics, it was like, how can you do ERP for things so like sexually horrific in nature? And it's not as intense as like some like for harm OCD, if you're scared of holding a knife, you would hold the knife. Obviously you don't want to go anywhere close to doing any kind of like anything regarding a sexual intrusive thought. But I'd have to sit there and kind of imagine myself going through the motions of what I fear most, and then break out of it and write about how it affected me, my anxiety levels, start going through various coping techniques to calm my nervous system down, and do that over and over again until it eventually lessens in intensity.
Amazing. And I'm glad you said calm your nervous system down. I think that's such a key part of it, right? What were some of those skills or tools or coping strategies that you used as part of
Yeah, so I did find that there's like some immediate quick fixes, and then there was some more long-term things that I could do. Some of the quick things were like extreme hot or extreme cold. I don't really, I mean, since I don't have access to extreme hot a lot of the times, I do a lot of extreme cold. Like I will go to a freezer and hold ice or something that will kind of reset the nervous system. Splashing cold water in my face is very good. Writing sometimes helps, just getting it out on paper. I like to write, but I have to be careful that I don't go back into that like list making kind of compulsion again. And trying to be like, all right, I'm going to plan my whole life out again, because that's not healthy either. But writing is good. I'd say that's 75% of the time. And then intense exercise I found is to be, again, with fighting, is very therapeutic. There have been several times where I've just been obsessing or having a full blown panic attack before I have to go to training, and then after training, completely regulated.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, I'm going to ask you that in a second. One last question on the therapy. Is it
Mhm.
you're still in therapy now?
Yes, but I've decreased the sessions that I go to quite a bit. I only see my therapist once a month now.
Oh, brilliant. And did you find that it was helpful fairly quickly, or did you see progress fairly quickly, or how long did that take?
So this is kind of funny. It was stagnant for a while, and then I had endured some life struggles that were not OCD related, just kind of ones that everybody goes through. I had dealt with a breakup and I lost my job, and then it that's when it kind of everything started coming quickly. Was once I had realized, hey, I'm very resilient. I can get through these OCD struggles that I'm having, and I recovered very quickly from just the regular trials and tribulations that life throws at you that aren't added on by this mental illness that I have. Then everything kind of started falling into place. The anxiety coping skills started working more and more. Um, the things that I had been learning in therapy had just kind of all started to make sense, and kind of at one of my lowest moments, which was pretty cool.
That is cool. That is cool. Um, nice. So let's get into MMA. Um,
Mhm.
was that just a natural progression for you from wrestling to MMA?
Yeah, so in America, they don't really have adult wrestling clubs unless you're in college or training for the Olympics. And the college I go to doesn't have wrestling, and I'm not training for the Olympics. So the other avenue for me was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I started doing that. It was a lot of fun. I was pretty good at it. And then through Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, there's a lot of fighters who train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well.
Mm.
And a lot of people were like, "Hey, you should fight. It's a lot of fun." And at first, pretty averse to it. But then I discovered that like the kickboxing portion of martial arts is it's a ton of fun, and it's kind of cool. It's makes me feel very alive. There's much more of a sense of danger in kickboxing, I found, than there is just grappling. And mixing the grappling and striking together to do MMA is it's been very rewarding, and I've found a good amount of success in it in the 2 years that I've done it.
Wow. Yeah, I imagine with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or just MMA generally, if you're not focused, you're going to get your ass kicked, right? So it kind of
Yeah, you have to
forces you to
be.
be, yeah.
Yeah, and it's another one of those things like I hear people talk about with anxiety disorders being in a flow state. Finding something that gets you in a flow state is very important, and fighting, you have to be in a flow state to be able to succeed. If your mind is elsewhere, say if I was thinking about an obsession while I was in the middle of sparring with somebody, I get punched quite a bit.
Yeah, true. Um, yeah, and I just there's something very like primal about it, right? Um,
Hmm.
Fighting. So yeah, interesting. Well, I'm glad, and obviously, I guess you train quite a few times a week, or
Yeah, I try to train about 5, 6 times a week.
oh,
I'm
wow,
preparing for a fight actually,
oh,
so
nice. When's that?
it's December 3rd, so in just about a week
Not
here.
long. Yeah. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, so I guess before I ask some different questions, is there anything else about your story that you want to share?
Um, yeah, I always try to reiterate to people that when I tell them my story, like it's comes in waves. It's not all like this upward trajectory. Um, Compared to a lot of people, I've found relief very quickly compared to a lot of people who are on an OCD journey. So I also want to tell people like I don't expect, maybe that's not the right word, but like if you don't really reach some sort of relief in say the time that I have or somebody else has. Please don't be discouraged. Everybody kind of goes at their own rate, and your team is here to help you and walk you through this. And there's plenty of support groups and friends that you can lean on as well as you try to figure out your brain.
Yeah, nice. You've kind of answered my next question, but I'll ask it anyway, just in case you've got a different answer, which is just words of hope for anyone listening with OCD.
Yeah, so no, like it's very cliche, but never give up. The second you give up on yourself is the second the thoughts take over. But there really is relief compared to how I felt 2 years ago to how I feel now. It's still maintenance. It is a chronic illness, so I don't think it ever goes away. But it also makes me kind of who I am. In some ways, I can use it to my advantage. I get hooked on things pretty easy because of it, I think. It's why I think I found success in things like fighting and things like recovery. I think I became pretty obsessed with recovery and trying to find an answer. But this time, instead of trying to answer an unanswerable question, like something existential, this one had an answer. There's plenty of coping skills and tools out there to deal with the way that your brain works.
Yeah, I like that. So let's say you're 20 now. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, let's do. So you can pick up the phone and call the 17-year-old version of you. What would you tell him?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind, which is funny, is I think it's just like the natural human response is I want to give him reassurance and tell him, oh, you're not a sexual predator. You're not a monster. Maybe I would say things like, hey, you're pretty resilient. You've got a lot of potential in you that you haven't reached yet. There is you're quite the fighter. Do as best as I can to try and give that 17-year-old kid kind of a will to keep going without reassuring him, because again, I know now that's one of the worst things you can do for somebody with OCD.
Yeah, that'd be a nice call. And yeah, reassurance definitely is not great, but I would say the first time he needed to know that, right? Because he was oblivious to what was going on. So I would say it would be okay to reassure him that one time, because it's more education than reassurance, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. Maybe tell 17-year-old me, like, hey, there's maybe instead of just saying you're a good person, you're not a monster, say like, hey, you're not a monster, you're suffering from a mental illness.
Yeah.
Don't give just the blind reassurance that a lot of uneducated people would give them. Maybe just say the vague, oh, you're a good person, try not to stress out. Say like, hey, it's okay that you're stressing out now. Give yourself some grace. This is a natural response to what you're feeling in your head, but it's not your fault. There's something out of your control that you still have to deal with.
Yeah, nice. I like that. That's a good way of wording it. And then you've got a billboard wherever you live. What do you want written on that billboard?
I've always liked the kind of "you are not your thoughts" quote. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I think one I like more maybe would be all we have is now.
Yeah, very true. Very true. So lastly, is there anything else you wish you could have said or shared today?
No, I appreciate you having me on. This was pretty cool experience being able to share my story with you and with your audience.
Thank you. Yeah, well, thank you for sharing your story, and obviously good luck with your fight. I hope you win. Thank you for listening to this week's podcast. And thank you to our Patreons who helped make this episode possible. And if you would like to find out more about Patreon and the rewards and benefits, then there will be a link in the episode description. If you enjoy the OCD Stories podcast and would like to support us with a one-time tip/donation, please go to theocdstories.com/support. All tips, no matter how large or small, are greatly appreciated. Please subscribe and rate the show wherever you listen to the podcast. And thank you to NoCD for supporting our work. And if you want to find out more about NoCD, head to go.treatmyocd.com/theOCD stories or click the link in the episode description. And quick disclaimer, guys, this podcast is not therapy. It is not a replacement for therapy. Please seek treatment from a trained professional. And until we speak, take care.